Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Welcome to episode 52 of the Relaunch Your Career podcast. Today, I'm really looking forward to speaking with Amy Voller, a dispute resolution practitioner and divorce coach. Amy had a long career in senior strategy and marketing roles across large organisations globally, where she worked for brands such as Telstra, Royal Bank of Scotland, and British Telecom. She led transformation programs that moved traditional marketing frameworks to insight-driven, innovation-based product or service delivery models. After 14 years overseas, she returned to Melbourne with her family to focus on guiding startup businesses through their growth phases. And this is when she became passionate about helping people navigate relationship conflicts. Having identified a significant gap in Australia's conflict resolution landscape, particularly in terms of providing support to individuals going through events such as divorce, Amy has transitioned into alternative dispute resolution and launched her new venture, Ripple Resolutions. Welcome to the podcast, Amy.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
I was interested to bring you on, Amy, for a number of reasons. First of all, I'm always interested in other people's journeys from corporate into coaching. So I'm really keen to talk to you about your own career journey. And secondly, over the years, I've worked with many clients, both men and women, where their career has really had a setback due to going through divorce. So really keen to chat to you about how people perhaps can navigate that journey through divorce and, how they can rebuild confidence and get their career back on track.
Fantastic.
Amy, I'm not sure if you've listened to some of the podcasts, but I always like to start at the beginning. Are you able to share your own career journey and how you came to work in dispute resolution and divorce coaching? I'm sure there's more to the story than my introduction.
Definitely. I suppose don't want to go too far back, but yeah, my career started classic out of uni into Telstra. It was the sort of early days of their graduate program when you tried different parts of the business to figure out which areas you wanted to head into. I had an arts degree, so I didn't have a specific, degree that gave me a specific profession at that stage. And I ended up in marketing and strategy and marketing, that sort of section, which really was where I found something that I connected with. And I then went on and did my master's degree at Melbourne Business School in marketing, and thankfully Telstra supported that process because it wasn't cheap. But through that, it really enabled me I really realised that actually it was quite a natural combination of analytical, creative and innovation. And so that is really the place that I stayed, so to speak. But what I wanted to do was not be pigeonholed in an industry. I'm sure that it's something your clients have experienced as well. And sometimes in recruitment, people they place you in an industry, whereas when you're in a profession like marketing and strategy, those skills really should be transferable to other industries. So I took myself to London. My sister was over there and I thought, I'm just going to go and I'm going to make myself stay a year and I'm going to really try and transfer into another industry. And I did. I managed to move into retail banking, again in a strategy marketing role. And, it's that direct to consumer or the consumer sort of environment, retail environment that helped. And I had a fantastic boss who just she was all about transferable skills. So for me, retail banking, then I ended up in fintech in London, just sort of moving with some people that I knew had sort of moved into a smaller business, not totally startup. It was a mid sort of size business, but that was really interesting. That was more market entry strategy, lots of analytics and figuring out what the best proposition would be to launch into a new market. And at the same time, I got married and had 2 children. And my husband got offered a job in Germany. And it was one of those opportunities where it was actually in our best interest as a family. But it's, again, something probably many of your clients have experienced, where you then need to make a decision to quit your job in order to follow for the family you follow, and your career then takes a little bit of a sort of, not, I wouldn't say a setback, but a change.
A little bit of a backseat for a while.
Yeah. But what was really interesting is when we moved to Germany, I didn't speak any German. My husband's Dutch, so he does. The directors of the company then figured out what I did and what my skill set was. And they offered me a project at first, which was great because the kids were really little and we'd just moved. But then ultimately I ended up becoming the marketing director.
Wow, great result.
So it was really, really just a great opportunity. It was luck. My husband there, we worked for the same boss. So we were colleagues, which was new.
Yeah, interesting.
But for me, it was that pinnacle career. I'd been always sort of heading towards the director role or chief marketing officer role. And it was an amazing role. It was for a company called Britax Childcare, who in Australia makes safe and sound car seats, but the German or European head office. And it was a wonderful job. I mean, I loved it. Had to learn a new industry, but again, I'd done that before. Yeah, so that was that for me. I reached that marketing pinnacle corporate trajectory.
And was that difficult to manage, being in a country without family support with 2 young children?
Yeah, it was a real challenge also because we were not in a really big city, and we were in a small, not too small, but a town where women traditionally didn't work in southern Germany, and actually they were incentivized through the tax system not to. It was cheaper to stay home. It cost you more to go to work. I mean, obviously not entirely. But we ended up having to have au pairs and live-in nannies that we would find from other parts of Europe. We had a great Dutch nanny that we'd had in London, and she decided in the end to move. But yeah, I mean, it was a challenge, really.
And then what brought you back to Melbourne?
Well, part of the deal when my husband took the job with Britax was that we knew they had an office in Melbourne, and that's home for me. It was not home for the rest of them. But that was always the goal. And so when the opportunity arose, it was going to be one or the other of us. And he got offered a job here. So again, I resigned and we relocated home, which after 14 years was actually more challenging than I expected. It was actually really starting over. Even though it was home, it was a new country again.
And you would have had teenagers with you then.
Well, they were actually still young. So the kids were born after, thankfully, after 10 years. But yeah, so they're teenagers now. But yes, they just started school when we moved back. So I decided to move then into more consulting, project-based work. So I had my own little, company, which was just me really. And I've been very lucky, those first few years, up until 2020, really. I had quite a lot of work. I had repeat work from different clients. And again, some of them were previous employers and others were people who'd I'd worked with and then had moved on. So,
sorry.
no, go for it. Yeah.
And so how did you then become interested in dispute resolution or conflict resolution?
Well, it's probably not an unfamiliar story. I think COVID was very disruptive. Having the kids home, having to be a part-time primary school teacher, and then just not really having the work because clients, everyone was like, okay, we don't know what we're doing, and projects were put on hold. And I found that I needed to work that much harder to get work, which I hadn't before. And it's almost like that scenario where you're like, that there's a report to write, but you do the washing instead. So I had friends and a couple of the clients I'd worked with before who, that, as we discussed, earlier before our we started, we all know people who've gone through divorce and separation, especially during COVID. And I found myself being that person, not just the ear at the end of the phone, but that person that would go, okay, let's try and figure out what's the strategy. I would research and try and find information to make them feel more confident because they were informed. Help them sort of figure out, okay, well, if you're going to get a lawyer, what do you need to ask them? You don't want to waste money on not knowing what you want to do with them. And it was just something I was doing. And I thought, gosh, imagine if there was a career in this. I love this more. And I had one of my ex-clients said to me, this is just a service that more people should know about. And I started researching, well, is this a career? And of course, I came across the US. I'm not a big fan of divorce coach as the professional title because it is about dispute resolution at an individual level. And what that means is giving or equipping people with the skills to be able to navigate through this process, the information so that they can make informed decisions, and the ability to manage emotions because you have to make such huge decisions. And also to get through the other side, recognizing that if you have children, you're going to be co-parents for the rest of your lives. And nobody really wants it to be an acrimonious situation. So the US obviously have a profession. It's recognized by the American Bar Association as a form or one of the processes people have available to them to use when they want to use an alternative dispute resolution process, which is a way of then not having to go to court, it becoming something that can be resolved outside of the court system.
And can I ask, so is that in Australia, we have mediators? Are you doing the same as what a mediator does, or is it different?
It's a complement to what a mediator does. The mediator really is a neutral party that works with both the couple, like both parties in the couple, and they facilitate a process for them to reach an agreement. And for many people, they can use that process and don't need additional support. But many people, even to participate in mediation, it's overwhelming. They find it challenging to participate in the process. So it is a complement by working with one of the parties to help them be prepared, to be informed, and to be able to participate more efficiently and effectively in the process. So no, it's not a family dispute resolution practitioner or a mediator, but it's a complement too. So I might work with someone and provide pre-mediation preparation.
Right. So you would typically only work with one party?
Correct.
And at what point would your clients engage you?
It depends on the client. So I've got clients who are at that stage where they're like, should I, shouldn't I leave? I'm thinking that I might leave, but I'm not sure. And then through work with me, we can make sure that they understand, well, what are the different options? What are the different processes? But also what's the impact, and reality test those. Because if you're well informed and you're prepared, then obviously making that decision is a lot less frightening.
Correct. And it's interesting. I read an article, which I'm sure you read recently I think it might have been the Sunday Life. And I think the figure that was quoted that a third of couples regret divorce because of the financial impact.
Absolutely. And it's a reality. Things cost less if you're together in one house, one set of bills. It does impact your financial stability. When there's been a financial discrepancy in incomes, then obviously that also has an impact. It isn't a surprise that that is a regret. There are other regrets people have, not recognizing that the problems don't necessarily disappear because you're no longer living in the same house. You still, especially when children are involved, you're still the same people, unless you learn different skills to manage your, new roles as co-parents, for example.
I want to come back to this.
Okay.
Can we just rewind a little? So you started to become interested in this. You were obviously naturally having some of these conversations with
Yeah.
perhaps your own friends or colleagues. And I think that's often a real test that if it's something you just naturally fall into, then perhaps you've got a bit of a calling or some natural strengths in that area.
Yes.
I'm interested. So you've identified this as an area of interest. How did you then decide what to study? Like, did you even know that you could go and study dispute resolution? Or I know there are some divorce coaching certifications, I think, in the US. Is that correct?
Yes. Um, Again, it's the sort of my bread and butter. I did research. I spent a lot of time um, looking into what the different options would be, whether I did mediation. But for me, it was more about working at the individual level. I really felt that was the gap that exists. And so I actually thought, well, maybe I should do one of these certifications. At least I would be certified by a body where then I would still need to uphold a certain level of professional development and ethical and behaviors and so forth. And what was interesting is one of the programs that was an American program actually was just starting an Australian cohort. Because for me, being a divorce coach in some of the traditional coaching qualifications really only teaches you the coaching framework. What I wanted to understand was the Australian family law landscape and the alternative dispute resolution landscape. And that's what this program offered. And it's run by the Australian cohort is run by a woman who's a lawyer who also has added mediation and divorce coaching to her practice. And so for me, that credibility and that professionalism was extremely important. Um,
And what's the name of that course, Amy?
so it's a very American, it's a Divorce Coaches Academy, which obviously makes sense because it's about teaching people to be divorce coaches. But their point of difference from, for example, some of the ICF or the other coaching programs is it's really centered in alternative dispute resolution frameworks. So that is the primary part, and then the coaching framework is what sits around that. And then clearly the Australian aspect is the family law landscape here.
I'm really interested in the other research that you did because I talk to my clients all the time about I guess, the correct process in changing careers. So that first step is self-assessment, understanding what your interests are, your values, your strengths, etc. The
Yeah.
next step is research. The next step is experimenting. So ideally designing some career experiments to test and validate your ideas. And then the fourth or the last step would be taking action, such as enrolling in a course or applying for a job. As part of your research, I was interested, did you approach people working as divorce coaches and interview them about their roles? Did you do any what I call information interviews?
I did. I predominantly interviewed Anne Marie, who's the lady who's running a program here, because she's been doing this for so long. And for me, this credible connection to the family law practice as well was where I spent most of my time. I really wanted to find people that, in my view, appeared to have that appropriate credibility and credentials in that space, rather than somebody who's a life coach and then adds divorce coaching to their services. So I did that sort of interviewing. I read a lot of different documents, especially, I suppose, in terms of the way it's viewed in the US and in the UK. And I sort of reality tested it with my pro bono practice clients in terms of questioning, would you want this service? Would you pay for something like this? So that's the sort of further research or testing I did before enrolling even in the program.
And that market research part is so important, isn't it? When you're going out, establishing your own business, to see what the appetite is for this service, how much are people willing to pay, if at all,
Yes,
because otherwise you're investing a lot in study that, you want to be able to obviously earn some money out of this as well.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And with the, just out of interest, with the coaching course, obviously you're taught to be a coach or to resolve disputes. Do they also teach you how to establish a coaching business?
That is part of it. And for me, I suppose that was an area that was less frightening, in terms of the taking that leap, because I'd been doing my own consulting, I had my own everything sort of set up. I didn't need to sort of learn some of those basics. But yes, they did. They talked about setting up the business, the processes involved in that, the way in which, from their experience and other coaches around the world, acquire clients, who to partner with, those sorts of things. So it was very comprehensive, because ultimately they want more coaches out there, but they also want well qualified coaches out there who are successful.
And I'm sure that's where you use a lot of your transferable skills from your marketing background.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
I think there's a
Sure.
real advantage when you start your business to have that type of background. I wish I had it sometimes.
It doesn't mean I'm very good at doing my own marketing, but at least I know what I need to do. Yes.
Let's go back to the discussion we were having earlier where you mentioned meeting with a client before they make the decision to divorce their partner and discussing their options.
Mm,
I'm interested, particularly when you're working with a client, could be male or female, who perhaps has been out of the workforce, often supporting their partner. I know I've worked with many clients over the years who have been a trailing spouse, who have lived overseas, supporting their partner whilst raising a family, or supporting their partner in Australia and raising the family.
mhm.
Is that a big part of the decision, particularly for those who perhaps haven't worked for a period of time?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest fears and barriers for people to choose to leave, if that is the right decision for them. But I think once you talk through, or probe, well, what is it they really need? What are their goals long term? What might be the steps they need, and some support they will need financially to get to that place. I think when one of the clients I worked with, who actually was in the US, she's an Australian in the US, um, exactly that, trailing spouse, prevented from working, because even the countries she lived in before the US, she wasn't allowed to work. So it was a very beginning of, she wanted to become a teacher, so she then started, before making the decision to leave, actually investing in becoming more qualified, so that she was ready. Because I think sometimes people, they think, oh, I need to go now. Actually, well, you can stay, you can go, but also you can wait with intention, and then have a plan in place in order to be ready before. The classic might be another client is waiting until the children are older, so that there's less of a financial, issue in terms of supporting young children. So these are some of the conversations I've had. It doesn't mean that then I coach them through the divorce. It might be that that's the end of our professional relationship, until such time as they want to come back. Um,
But they've been able to work through the options and make an informed choice.
correct, correct. Absolutely.
How do you see, like, for those clients that have been out of the workforce for a period of time, often I see the longer you're out, perhaps the less confidence they might have.
Yeah.
Um, do you feel like that's a real factor in terms of whether they go or whether they stay?
Yeah, it is a real challenge. And I think that the worry that it's going to, their experience as well will be just like they've seen in the movies where the partner takes them to the cleaners and they walk away with nothing. And I think sometimes being better informed about what the options are, and that there are, depending on their financial circumstances, there are ways in which they can ensure that they are supported. That then provides them with they're more empowered then to start going, okay, so I'm going to have time to start to reestablish myself because I can ask for support in order to do that. Um, I think that it is a barrier, but you know, it is also empowering when they start to visualize and sort of see that actually they will be okay in the end. It just might take a bit of time. Um,
That's correct. That confidence can be rebuilt, but it does take some time, and it takes action.
yes,
And I think that's the most difficult part about losing confidence, is that it prevents you from taking the action you need to take to actually make it happen, to get another job.
absolutely. And I think also if you've been someone who had a career and you'd gone so far in your career, and then when you've become a parent or whether you've become a trailing spouse, you've had to sort of step off that trajectory, it's very hard to think that people will not recognize that you're not really starting from scratch. There are still skills, and even being a parent, there are skills that are of value. And employers, probably more so, you're an expert in this area. I cannot imagine every employer is not going to recognize that. And I think having that confidence and understanding and belief, and as you said, taking action, is really key. And the divorce process requires action and decisions. You can't sit still and wait for it to happen.
I think those sort of clients often, particularly if they've been overseas, often they don't perhaps also consider the skills that they've developed living in those overseas countries, supporting families, having to adapt to new cultures, new environments. Often they're been involved on committees or been involved in some things from a volunteer basis, I often find. And they can definitely draw on all of those skills as well, even if they have been out of the workforce for a period of time.
Absolutely. And I think that enabling them to recognize and drawing that out that they do have those skills, is really important. And, you know, for me, what I do is a very event-based service, probably similar, but success to me is that they have been empowered to get through the process and that they've got a plan of whether it's where are they going to live, how are they going to earn money, and what career are they going to have. That really is key. Um, and all of that really is confidence, communication, emotional management, and then being able that then enables them to take action.
If someone was out there considering whether they leave a partner and go through a divorce, what would be your three key pieces of advice for them?
I think firstly would be to ensure that they think or they believe that divorce is going to be the solution. And I don't mean it in the sense that I'm trying to convince everybody, because there are certain circumstances, especially with family violence or significant betrayal or addictions, that it really isn't, you know, that becomes very clear. But for the majority, it's about, is that really going to solve the issue? So it's not, there's no right or wrong answer. It probably, if it does, it does. But really be sure. Then I think it's about informing yourself. Get informed. Make sure that you understand all the different process options. Understand the impacts, of decisions, and because it isn't just a legal process and a division of money. It's a real change in life, and you know, your identity, your social connections, everything. So it's about really making sure you've looked at all of those. And then I think the final one is get help, go and talk to someone. And whether it's someone like me or whether it's a lawyer or a psychologist, it's really don't do it alone. Get some help.
And Amy, after someone has gone through the separation, the financial separation, like, do you often continue? Because I know the process can draw out for quite a long time from some friends who've gone through it. Do you often support your clients throughout that process, like even long after the separation?
Yes, absolutely. And in actual fact, I've got a couple of clients at the moment who came to me. They're already divorced. The division of assets has already happened, but there's some loose ends or there's some issues that arise that they hadn't thought about at the time. So yeah, I work with clients at any stage in the process. As I said, one of the clients who thought when they split things up that they could be amicable and they could work together and still share a property. And then, of course, the reality turned out to be something different. So they had to go back to mediation or co-parenting issues. You know, suddenly there's a decision that they hadn't really thought they would need to make or they hadn't even thought about. And then a conflict arises. So, yeah, for me, it's it could be a short, sharp experience or it could be a longer experience, depending on what the client needs. Everyone's situation is unique. And, you know, it really could be even they're struggling. There's a conflict between a teenage child because of differences there. And even it's about resolving conflict between those parties.
And just out of interest, do you also apply your conflict resolution expertise to individuals in work environments who have conflict?
I can, yes. And it's one of those things where it's the same core process in a way. Obviously, everyone, as I said, is different, but it's about having conflict in itself isn't a bad thing. It's about how conflict can be resolved. And that is a skill that we're not people. Some people are natural at it, but many of us need to be taught. And so, yes, I can work with people in that situation, two colleagues that have to work together, but really can't or don't want to. And, you know, obviously within families. And the other thing is resolving conflict and learning these skills can actually help save marriages. If one party learns how to de-escalate conflict by having the right communication skills or helping shift it from blaming an individual to solving a problem, it actually can improve the relationship. And yeah, I mean, I'm not an advocate of divorce necessarily. I'm an advocate of people resolving conflict.
You must have a very calm house compared to mine.
Oh, I don't know. I have two teenage girls. I'm not sure about.
So do I. I've got three, but luckily the boy's in the middle. But yes, there's often conflict around hair straighteners and skin products and all of those important things in life.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Last question, Amy. If someone was interested in finding out more about what you do or having a chat with you to see if you can help them, how do they find you?
Come hop on my website, rippleresolutions.com. Well, obviously that'll be in the show notes. And just book a call with me. I offer a 30-minute, no obligation, free call. We can have a chat. I can listen, and then, you know, go from there. I'm very flexible. I don't offer fixed packages. I'm all about the individual and what they need at that time.
Excellent. Really interesting to hear about your own transition and congratulations on finding your best fit career. If anyone's interested in chatting with Amy, of course, I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thanks again for taking time out of your busy day.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media. at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.